Yes, that's right. Tough as Nails, a recap, episode 6 of season 2. I am Rob Cesternino. Welcome back, everybody. We have a lot to talk about here tonight as we are going to slap some paint on the walls and then clean some windows here as we are talking about the latest round of Tough as Nails. Back with us on our Savage crew, up in the scissor lift, it is Jessica Liese. Jess, how are you?
Doing great, Rob. I want to get into this podcast and summarize it quickly. We're going to eliminate all of our redundant dialogue.
Okay, perfect. Yes, and slap some paint on all of our mistakes. And, of course, a man who that I'm not sure if any of his artwork is looking a little tatty except for what's on his bicep. It is Mike Bloom.
I'm feeling a little shook when Jess says eliminate redundant dialogue, because that's like taking out 80% of the things I say on a podcast. But happy to be here to talk about 50 Shades of Nail Gray Paint.
Oh,
I hadn't thought about that, Mike. Basically, eliminating the redundant dialogue is basically just muting your mic.
Exactly. Quite literally.
All right. So it was another wild night of Tough as Nails. And, you know, we said in the previews last week, there's a EMT coming and a fire engine. Is there a disaster on the way? We said, it's probably nothing. We were not expecting freight train to require medical attention.
Tough as Nails wrong is real, people.
Yeah.
It is happening. We have our second, well, I don't know. I don't know if we can call it a medevac. It's a big cliffhanger, maybe not as big as Terra's, as to whether or not Freight Train will be medically clear to continue in the game, but it at least was enough to take him out of the individual competition proper.
Yeah. All right. So that is going to be a question that we will opine about here today. What will happen with Freight Train? Is he off the show? Is he going to be back next time? We'll talk about that and much more here as we get into Tough as Nails for episode number 6. At the top of the show here, I do want to address something that came out of last week's episode. We did our breakdown of episode 5 last week and went through everything that took place in last week's episode. But sometimes we are not always completely on point, and we do make some mistakes. And so we did hear about a time that we could have done better last week on the show. We had heard from one of the contestants, Scott, from this season, who posted a video about how that he felt like that we were singled him out unfairly during last week's episode of the podcast. We were focused on where the Savage crew ended up having some issues in the team portion, and we did single out Scott as being the cause of those issues, and that we may have gone too far in that. And apparently, based on his response, it seems like we did. And the last thing that we want to try to do is hurt anybody's feelings who are participating in these shows for our amusement. You know, we come on here, we try to have fun with the listeners talking about a show. Sometimes, we lose sight of the line and forgetting that there are actual people on the other end of the show. So that's never our intention when we come on here looking to just talk about silly reality TV shows.
Yeah, so suffice it to say, we've also issued a private apology to Scott as well. We reached out to him apologizing about the remarks that went a bit too far in singling him out last week. Like you said, for the effort of making for really fun, entertaining podcasts, there are some times that we sort of veer from just plain snark into personal comments. Obviously, no, that is never our intention. As three people who find themselves in the spotlight as well in varying degrees, we know firsthand how bad comments can ruin your day, and it's never our intention to be the source behind those bad comments. So again, we do apologize to Scott and the listeners who, took offense to that. There was also a bit of a mention about a comment that he had made about us possibly mocking the art that is displayed in his house in his TikTok, which it unfortunately was a bit of a misunderstanding from a joke that originated in Our Amazing Race.
Yeah. So if I could just clear that up, that Scott had made a video and he had mentioned about how the podcasters were making fun of his paintings at his house, which I'm sure are incredible. We have no idea what kind of paintings Scott has at his house. We were characterizing the relationship that Scott and Merrill had as sort of like busting each other's chops as being akin to the relationship that we saw between Gary and D'Angelo on The Amazing Race. And we were referencing a conversation that was from the other Phil Keoghan hosted show on CBS, The Amazing Race. And when we were talking about Gary's paintings, we were referencing this clip.
And I can't wait to do this challenge because I love art. So like I studied detailed art. I've been to the Louvre. I've been to multiple different places in the world with art. I have a bunch of art in my house. I just love that type of stuff.
You don't really strike me as a Renaissance man.
I love artwork though. I love artwork.
I've known you forever, Gary, and I've never known. Who are you? You're like 6'6", like a caveman, but you like art.
I do.
Yeah. So again, apologies for the misunderstanding on that part. But yeah, that we're just we were loving Gary and D'Angelo in The Amazing Race, and look for any opportunity to talk more Gary and D'Angelo.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and then painting gets brought into this episode.
Yeah,
as well.
painting this week.
It all connects.
It's a nice segue, but
yeah.
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say anything either, because I think some of the comments that seem to have hit Scott the hardest came from me, and it wasn't fair. And I recognize my error. And these two guys know this very well, that there have been times where somebody has said something about something we've said on a podcast, and off the podcast, we've just sort of kind of come unglued about it. So I understand the impulse to want to just yell back at the people. That's not what I am. That's not who I really am. That's not what I'm like. If you knew me better, you would know that. I've been there. I know what it's like, and it's not fun. And I feel terrible that I would have contributed to that at all.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder about how Tough as Nails, I think, really prides itself on the fact that these are really, normal, everyday people that are putting themselves out there in so many ways, showcasing their vulnerability as an extremely tough competition for, not only a cash prize, but also for bringing more awareness maybe to these trades that are so essential to our everyday. It's a nice reminder to both us and hopefully people listening out there as well to quote, Scott's phrase of choice, to be better and to remember exactly who these people are that are putting themselves out there, specifically in a show that does pride itself positivity over negativity, definitively.
Okay. So with that being said, let's focus our attention on episode number 6 of Tough as Nails. And this was a week where Savage Crew is looking to get back in the win column after a couple of wins from Dirty Hands. Just, do you feel like that we're building up a Dirty Hands is overconfident storyline?
Well, it's interesting how this parallels what we saw last season, Rob. And I almost, to the point where I was thinking, like, do we have another Orange Tribe curse on our hands like we have seen in Survivor? But I think that you do run the risk of having momentum when you are winning a lot of things. The hubris just comes at you and it gets the better of you. So, yeah. And I think especially with this challenge, you saw they thought they were done. Like they thought they had it. And it was almost like once they found out they weren't as on it as they thought they were, they just couldn't get back into the groove.
Yeah. They show up to the job site, and we see a Phil drive in the truck. Mike, look at that.
I mean, he's been doing this a lot. We are missing Phil Keoghan again for this week. And let's add that to the list of questions I've actually always wanted to ask him, but I always forget is, okay, what's the choice of you driving the truck in? It's almost like the equivalent of Survivor Borneo when they had the chest of money in the center of tribal council. Like, I'm assuming it serves as this constant reminder of this is what you're going for at the end of the day. But yeah, I always love the effect that Phil probably had to drive however long of a distance onto the set as everyone sort of like, applauds him as he comes in. And I think one of my favorite runners of Phil's hosting this show are the fictional people that he comes up with.
Yeah.
Right between, the farmer from a couple weeks ago. This week was, we have a very wealthy, very particular man who loves the color gray, and so you must paint the wall of his parking garage all gray.
Yes, he's very rich. He's very particular, and he loves gray paint. The man who owns this building.
Yeah, Tough and Nail's sugar daddy loves the gray and loves to make sure that everything is monochromatic.
Why do I have this image in my head of Dark Helmet with the action figures? Like, this is Phil. Like, I'm gonna have my wall painted gray today. Don't worry, the Tough as Nails team is on it.
I'm very particular.
And
Make
I'm
sure
very
you don't miss
wealthy.
anything. Yeah.
Don't ask me how I made my money, though.
Look, Mike, I think you underestimate the power and influence of big parking.
That's true. Listen, they've been in a society that is continuously changing. Parking is one thing that never does. So I think it has something that has survived the test of time over the decades.
So it was a great moment in the episode when, Phil is like warming up the teams and talking about, okay, Savage Crew, do you feel like you could bounce back this week? And this is Swifty's response.
I can't take nothing away. They tough. They beat us. So now it's our turn to beat that ass.
Whoa.
Whoa. I don't know what challenges Swifty was looking for when he saw those rollers, but it certainly wasn't that.
Oh, dear. I don't even know where you're going with that, Mike. I can't picture what that even would be.
Listen, I don't want to put myself in Swifty's brain at this moment. But yeah, he certainly had he was pumping up the team, right? So I guess that was a way to really do so, was invoke that imagery.
Yeah.
Beat that ass.
I don't know. Maybe that was effective. That was the rallying cry for Savage Crew. Beat that ass.
There's multiple asses, though. They don't have one ass.
Yeah, I
the
guess
figurative,
who is the representative ass?
dirty hands ass.
Yeah, I was just saying, don't say dirty ass, please.
Yeah, that was one of the names they workshopped and rejected ultimately.
Yeah, that's why they can't force them to change names. Because don't move on to the other dirty body parts. Please just stay with hands. We're band-aiding it.
Yeah. And Phil said that the artwork up on the wall was looking a little tatty. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot
is
of
that is that Kiwi for tattered?
I wonder.
That's a real word.
Tatty?
Yeah, but
100% a real word. It is from the Commonwealth. I've heard British people say it. I've heard Australians say it. I assume it extends to New Zealand as well.
Well, yeah, I wondered if it was sort of like how people from, that sort of region of the globe like to abbreviate things like brekkers for breakfast. Maybe tatty is short for tattered. No, it looks like, listen, I'm on Urban Dictionary. It looks like tatties is slang for potatoes, usually mashed.
No, that's tatties, plural. Tatty singular is an adjective.
I mean, can I use it in a sentence that, like, boy, after a year in quarantine, I feel like I am looking rather tatty.
I think it's more like after wearing the same plaid shirt every day for a year, that shirt is looking rather tatty.
Mm-hmm. I myself cannot look tatty.
I don't think a person can be tatty. I think it is an article of clothing, and I think it means more like worn out.
Yeah.
So a living organism cannot be tatty.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Speaking of Googling terms that you don't know, I had gotten a text. I was texting with an old friend who reached out from out of the blue, and we were going back and forth, and they sent me that something was that I don't know if they used an acronym that I am not familiar with, or there was an autocorrect that screwed up what they did. They said that something was FAF, and I could not, for the life of me, figure out what that meant. I did turn to the Urban Dictionary, and it did not point me in the result that I think that they were going.
Well,
Rob, is this person as real? Rob, is this person as real as the guy that owns a parking garage?
Of course, yes.
Wealthy,
and they're very particular.
Very particular.
About their abbreviations, their acronyms.
Can you use it in a sentence? Maybe not the sentence that person had if you don't want to be that public about it.
They were complimenting my work, which they said was FAF. Or I am FAF.
Like,
are you sure this is a compliment?
AF? Foxy AF?
So. Yeah.
Fantastic AF.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of F words that I think could substitute in for very positive terms of endearment.
You could use a lot of F words to describe this podcast.
Okay. All right. So that was just something I was mulling about for a little while yesterday. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the painting task. I have to say I was a little confused in terms of like the overall like blocking of how this was all going on. That I felt like we were cutting back and forth between the two teams. There was a lot of great tension about what was going on. It seemed like it was a photo finish. Mike, I don't know if I was exactly following what the issues were facing the two teams.
Great tension and great tension. Yeah. So this was another task that we sort of talked about yesterday and continue to heap praise onto Tough as Nails for using the team challenges to give everyone different roles. We had another case here, right, where two people got into the scissor lift and sort of took care of anything that wasn't reachable on the big wall. And then you had people, the other three were on the ground taking care of everything else. Looks like they had like one person on an extender, just sort of, and ladders being able to reach the middle of everything. And then the other two people were sort of on the ground. And then maybe you have like a Selly as a utility player. What it came down to was that they had to make sure, again, this guy is very particular, that each and every centimeter of wall had to be covered in this nail gray paint. So I don't know if it's Phil or if it's a producer who is noticing like these glaring errors, these little peaks of paint that peek through. But what it came down to is that each team essentially had a sliver sticking out of color remaining, and they basically had to find it. I think it actually came down to like random guesswork, because between being up close to the paint and also the glare from the sun, it probably became incredibly difficult to discern what was gray and what was not, especially when you're staring at a wall for hours at a time. Your mind sort of gets confused. So I think it honestly came down to a lot of great detail-oriented work by both teams. But honestly, at the end of it, it was just making sure you got the right spot with this final do-over of everything.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting to me, Mike. I have frequently wondered over the course of our 1.5 seasons of Tough as Nails if it is sort of policed the same way as we know Survivor and Amazing Race are, where there is an adjudicator standing off screen to watch what they're doing and decide whether or not they got it right. And I'd even wondered, like when they started the task, I thought, is there going to be a point where they think they've got it and then Phil has to tell them they don't got it? And this indeed came to pass this episode. And I thought it was, that added the best tension of all, because you thought it was a blowout. You thought Dirty Hands had it in the bag. And then it turns out they can't find their little sliver. And I thought it certainly, like, if it had not been for the little sliver, this might not have been a very exciting task to watch.
Yeah. And so the other, I mean, I don't know. I feel like this was a really interesting task to watch because of the communication breakdown that ensued with Dirty Hands. Dirty Hands far from clean, not just covered in paint.
Yes.
Episode.
Just the hands, though.
Just the hands. I don't know, a little bit in the hair with Freight Train as well. But I'm going to stop talking because we have a special guest arriving on the scene.
Yes, we're very thrilled to bring in a man who knows the wealthy owner of a building, who's very particular, can drive a truck.
Very wealthy,
yeah, who's never looking tatty. Here's Phil Keoghan. Phil, how are you?
I'm good. I'm even more late than I.
No, you're doing. You're great.
All right, so can I just tell you some of the challenges of working in COVID? So I'm trying to do voiceover in my wardrobe, and it just so happens that today is the day that my neighbors decided to do like full-on renovation in the bathroom. So in between bangs, I'm like trying to slip in a quick bit of voiceover.
Wait, Phil, are you sure? Is it an overtime challenge going on next door? That it's okay, renovate your bathroom while someone's recording?
It does feel like an overtime challenge. So I'm like, I just about get it in here. Boom! And I'm like, so then I start again and do it again.
Yeah. Phil, you don't need to tell podcasters about this. This is like challenges of everyday life.
Yeah, it's not exactly, network television.
Sure.
That actually ties into one of the questions I had for you this week, Phil. And I think we may have asked you about this before, but something that stuck out to me a lot during the team challenge is how you are calling the plays. And so my question is, can they hear you observing who is doing well and who is doing poorly, or is that ADR?
They can hear me. Yeah, they can hear me. And I also wear I have like a little, like a little prompt thing that if something is happening at the other end with dirty hands, like on that wall, and I'm focused on Savage Crew, then they can go, hey, there's something happening at Dirty Hands, and I'll walk over. But yeah, they can hear me, and sometimes they'll even make a comment like, yeah, we got it, Phil. Yeah, we know.
Well, and so to that point, Phil, because it came down to like such, inch-long slivers that existed on the wall, did you have people sort of like paying attention to those specific walls, tipping you off like, oh, they haven't finished yet, or you could give Dirty Hands, or you could give Savage Crew the all clear, they've won it?
Yeah, that was the only way. The only way I was able to manage that was literally to be able to have have the challenge department in my ear. And there were 3 people watching the wall over on Dirty Hands and 3 over on Savage Crew, and other people as well. But they were responsible to make the call, and both of them were like, "Yep, there's still one spot. There's a piece of blue paint left on Dirty Hands, and then there was a piece of yellow left on Savage Crew." So once we knew, and then once I knew what to look for, and then they could say it's about halfway up, it's such and such, and it's between the bricks. Oh, and then I can see it. So that without their eyes and ears, I can't cover everything. I mean, it's no different, I guess, than calling a game, sports game where the sports commentators are getting clued in on certain things that are happening, or some insight. Oh, we just heard from down on the sidelines that so-and-so is, thrown up into a bucket. He's having a tough game.
Phil, I know everybody's wondering about Freight Train. Can you give us any update on how Freight Train is doing after he got the medical attention on the show last night?
Yeah, I mean, he's good. He's fine. And, of course, my heart sank because I thought something more serious or sinister had happened. It was really that he was, as Selly said, exhausted, dehydrated, and tired and uncomfortable. And I think just being in the harness and hanging there and then straining, and then he was feeling a little anxious about going over. He said that he felt like a little something pop in his chest. My first instinct was, oh my God, I hope it's nothing like sinister, but it was literally just that he like got into a bad position.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was a structural thing, but it was more of just like a painful muscle. He got into an uncomfortable situation. The challenge, of course, with COVID is that once he went to the hospital, he broke our COVID bubble.
Yeah.
That's so it becomes way more complicated in a second, just like that, because we were not dealing with the regular world. We're dealing with the COVID world. So yeah, I mean, people were concerned, and rightly so. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, because I do love to read what people's comments are, and some people have said, oh, like with the hay bales. Oh, I work on a farm, and I can do 100 bales all by myself. I do it in an afternoon, and they're not straw bales. They're hay bales, alfalfa bales, and they get wet, and then I'm in a storm, and then I do it all by myself. And I've been doing it since I was 15, and it's so on the one hand, you get people saying that what we're doing is not tough enough. And then you get the other side of it, which is this Tough as Nails show. It's too tough. I'm like, So I think for those people who are tough, who really are tough, they come from this world, and they've seen this world, and they know what it's like to be tough and work in a tough world. They see this kind of challenge every day, because it's challenging for them every day, because they don't have a choice to go out to milk the cows in the morning, and whether there's a storm or not, they got to go out. The cows have got to be milked, and so and then there's other people who maybe go to an office every day, and so their level of what is tough and what isn't is a completely different measure from that farmer who maybe this little girl's been getting up with her dad to go milk the cows since she was 6 years old, and her measure of toughness is different.
Phil, I thought this was a setup for Tough as Nails casting for season 3, which is now started.
If you got up with your dad to milk cows, you might be good for Tough as Nails season 3.
Yeah, if you think you're tough as nails or you know someone who is, then sign up for Tough as Nails right now. Go to cbs.com/casting and apply now. So, yeah, I mean, some of the people who have kind of like said, "Oh, I could do that with my eyes closed," I'm like, let's see it. You know, step up, let's do it. Come on. You know, first thing I get you to do is do it. Give us a brutal truth test. Let's see where your score's at. 8 minutes, as many burpee push-ups as you can in 8 minutes. Let's get a measure on your overall strength, endurance, mental toughness. Let's see where you're at there. And you really feel like you got something to prove and you're tougher than these people and we've got on, then all the power to you. Let's go. Sign up.
Mm-hmm.
So that does sort of beg the question then. We've talked about how it is very difficult to calibrate and measure toughness.
Yes.
But that being said, I wondered do you think that this season the challenges were tougher than the previous season? Because we've had, 2 people medevaced basically. Are those fluke things or was it legitimately harder?
Well, in the real world, would an ambulance have been called in for that? Like once freight train calmed down, I don't know. I mean, we have to go through certain protocols, obviously, and there's certain protocols that you follow. But no, I mean, everybody knows they're signing up. Like I said, everybody knows they're signing up for a show called Tough as Nails. It's not soft as pillows, and which again, I think we all agree would be an interesting show. But look, when your kids go to gymnastics on a Saturday, there's a chance they're going to come home with a fractured ankle. There's a chance that they're going to crack a rib on the bar. If someone steps into an MMA ring, there's a chance that they're going to get hurt. Your kids are playing baseball and somebody might hit them in the head with a ball. I mean, but you could also cross the street and get run over by a bus. I mean, you can't alleviate all chances of someone being in discomfort or dehydrated or I mean, as much as we encourage them to drink enough and to stay hydrated, I mean, they're adults, and we can't be like, come on, mom and daddy want you to drink more drinks. I mean,
that was last week, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that was make the drinks. The week before was drink the drinks.
Yeah.
I always worry. I worried constantly about Swifty not drinking enough because he never sweat. He would never sweat, and I'd be like, Swifty, you're not drinking enough hydration.
Yeah.
And that's why he got cramps, in my opinion.
Right.
And just having been an athlete and having that drummed into me. But these are also people that, like Swifty he is tough. He's so there's this thing my dad would call country strong. And Swifty's that kind of country strong. Like his constitution is so tough. He's the kind of guy that would like forget to have a drink and he'd go work in the steel factory, and he'd probably like get through working 5-6 hours and realize he hadn't really had any hydration. Let me have a drink.
Yeah, but I think I was going to say that I think it's something that also like highlights the difference between the 2 seasons of that. It really has been like this like song of fire and ice. Where the first season I remember it was so cold, like everybody was freezing all the time. This season, and I'm sure, like I think it was only like a couple months earlier in the crazy Los Angeles weather that it's like so hot. They're talking about all the time.
Yeah, and that's another thing. We don't know what happens is like a slightly warmer temperatures than normal, slightly cooler temperatures than we usually have. And, in California, we're in a desert. And so in the mornings, it can be very cool and at night, very cool. And then it certainly gets hot. So, the only way you can sort of measure whether it's too tough or not is to really ask the contestants. And, they constantly tell us that what they do in their everyday lives is way tougher than what we're asking them to do. I mean, we're asking them to go compete intensely to do something for a couple of hours or whatever. These are people who've done 30 plus years. I mean, you think about how tough somebody like Lee is getting up, that to me is way tougher than the little window of challenge that we give them. That's tough. That's, that's hard, and just like someone who goes to work in a factory every day, you can't underestimate the mental toughness that it takes to get up, get dressed, get the kids ready, get them out, get them to school, drop them off, carpool, get to the factory, there's so many people who are doing so many hard yards. And we all have such a different measure of what tough means in this world. And I think it's an eye opener for a lot of people. Like, wow, there's some people that do it really hard. Like they holding down 3 jobs, and it's part of why we're trying to do Tough as Nails, because a lot of shows focus in on the glamorous and the glitz and the what happens when you make it, and we're striving to make it. And make it means the jets and the bling and the comfort life and the big house and the big car and all of that. There's this aspirational aspect to these shows where that's what they're playing up. Like, you're going to make it, you're going to be a star, you're going to Hollywood, you're going to be that. And then there's this other side, which is for the majority of the population, who that's just like a whole other world. Like they don't have that. They're over here trying to pay bills. And, like I said to you, I learned a lot from listening to my grandparents growing up in the Depression. And there's a lot of Americans who get that. They're not that far away from understanding that world. And then there's people that are still living in that world. And we kind of maybe don't know, because we just don't, maybe some of us are not exposed to that. But there's a lot of Americans who are. They're lining up in food banks right now, and they're doing hard yards. And, this season in particular, I think with someone like Angel, I think the reason there's so much empathy for somebody like Angel is that there's a lot of people can identify with that. They can identify with the fact that Freight Train doesn't have a lot, but he's got more than Angel has. And that's very true for a lot of people. So, yeah.
So going back to sort of like the weather-dependent setting, I think what also might have really turned up the heat quite literally was the fact that you were in the city, right? The fact that you had them up close to the buildings and the glass and everything. And that sort of ties into what we talked about last week, where it really does feel like between last week at the stadium / the brewery, and then this week, it really does feel like for the first time ever, Tough as Nails sort of went into a more urban setting as opposed to what we're used to. Was that a manner of what you were speaking about in previous podcasts about just finding the locations that can fill your needs? Was this like a very deliberate choice of we wanted to tackle some more urban types of challenges? What was the impetus behind going to the city?
Really, the latter really was about trying to get into the inner city. Shooting in the inner city was way more difficult than going out into an open air farm. Where we shot the hay bales was a breeze. There's lots of room to park. There's lots of open air. There's less concern about how to spread people out while you're shooting COVID. Going into downtown is very hard. We couldn't have green zones and red zones mixing on one side of the pavement. So all the green zones are on the other side of the street, red zones on this side of the street. Now you've got the public, so now you have to block off certain areas where the public can go. That costs, because now you've got to get the police involved to block things off. And so it becomes way, way, way more complicated. But we also are aware that there are people in urban environments who are also tough. So we can't, it's just a matter of trying to find new and different things. And painting is a very tough job. And so is window washing. And so is picking up straw bales. So it's just a matter of getting a mix. And we're developing right now the challenges for season 3, and there's some really interesting challenges in that as well. And hopefully, as more and more people get the shot, I'm hoping that some of the restrictions that we had to face in season 2, we're not going to have to be so strict with in season 3. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, because it's tough.
Will you be making vaccination a requirement for cast and crew?
I don't know if legally we can.
Interesting.
It's a conversation we've had. I don't know whether you guys know, but I don't know whether you can mandate at a workplace that someone has to have a vaccination. It certainly would be encouraged. And it's very, as you know, it's a very political thing, right? If you look at if you look at those people who are like Democrats tend to skew towards wanting it, and then Republicans don't. That's just I don't know where I got that poll from, but somewhere I read that. I thought it was good that President Trump said, get the vaccination. We know he's had it. So I thought that was a positive sign. But I hope that there's enough people who are going to get it, that helps those people who have decided they're not going to get it. And I read an interesting thing the other day. I saw where a woman had got the Moderna, is it the Moderna vaccination? And her child, she gave birth, and her child had the antibodies. And I thought that was really interesting. So there's another, that was like, that's a 2-for-1, one shot for 2 people.
Yeah. Well, come for the Tough as Nails recap, and then get all of the latest vaccine news also. This is great.
It's a mix. So speaking of mix, though, Phil, I want to talk about something. When it came to the paint, and also segues into a little bit of last week, let's talk Tough as Nails branding for a second, right? Because we had the nail gray paint. The three of us actually, before we came onto this call, were like, okay, is this like an actual color? We looked it up. We couldn't find a shade of it. Was nail gray something that you came up with in reference to Tough as Nails?
We might have taken a few liberties in the shading of the gray, Michael. Are you offended by that?
No. I mean, it's in line with what you did last week, right? When you had 5 branded Tough as Nail beers. So I think you are slowly but surely rolling out your own marketing underneath the context of this entire show. So
first was the calendar, then the IPA, and now the paint.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, I think you're doing some half measures here, Phil, and we don't want half measures. We want you to go all in on the merchandising, or don't do it at all. That's
what about Tough as Nails underwear that is lined with barbed wire?
Ooh, it depends on which side.
I mean, some people might be into that.
Is that a pattern or actual barbed wire?
Maybe it's just the backside, and then that's the Tough as Nails underwear. I don't know.
Yes. Is that where Swifty got this from?
Can't take nothing away. They tough. They beat us. So now it's our turn to beat that ass.
Yeah.
Michael, here's one thing I'll promise you. If you ever want some nail gray paint, I'm going to give you the discount of the century, okay? You want nail gray paint? I think it'll look great behind you right there.
I think so too. Look,
so let me know, and I'll hook you up with 5 gallons. I'll give you a deal on 5 gallons. You buy 10, I'll give you a 2-for-1. How about that?
All right, so Rob, add to the laundry list. Getting paint deals is another thing you can get on a Tough as Nails podcast. Yeah.
Phil, was your neighbor doing the bathroom in nail gray?
I hesitate to ask. I would love to go over there, but now I'm concerned because I don't know, are they wearing masks over there? It's like in the regular world, I'd walk over and say, hey, you mind if I have a look to see what's going on?
Look at this great work going on here in this bathroom.
Yeah, not a spot.
Yeah.
Maybe I could just walk in and I could say, hey guys, listen, do you mind just to keep my commentary in? Do you mind if I just commentate on your work while you're there?
Or Phil, have them do the burpee test. The casting might be like you might find the next superstar right next door.
Yeah, you never know. Wouldn't that be great if I could just find one just like that?
Does that count as nepotism, though? If it's like, oh, we're next door neighbors with Phil Keoghan. Oh, okay, thumbs on the
No, the contractors, not the neighbors.
Like, it's not the neighbors. I don't think so. But I do. Listen. I have. What is the time? I have 7 minutes with you.
Okay.
Left.
How about this then? Okay.
All right, go ahead.
I was gonna say then. Could you give us any sense of how things will work if Freight Train can't return to the game now that he has been to the hospital?
Just that we'll have to adapt. And I'll leave that for you to figure out. But listen, if it wasn't for COVID, he would have just come back to the hotel, and it would have been back to normal. I mean, I guess that's what I'm saying is that the unfortunate part of it is with him now out of the bubble and us having to follow COVID protocols and him not coming back, there may be some assumption that, oh, this must have been some serious thing, and that's why he's not there. But the reality is it's because of COVID. So he wanted to come back immediately after he got hydrated and cooled down. He was ready to go. It's just, like I said, we're just not living in a normal world.
Sure. That we know.
And it's frustrating, so,
Yeah. Phil, was there something you wanted to bring up before Rob asked this question?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I just a quick microwave story. So I love being handy around the house. And right now I'm doing a little touch-up painting, so around the house. And anyway, the microwave broke. My daughter told me that the microwave button, the start-stop button broke. So I was away at the time. And so we called in a repair person, and they said, oh, you're going to have to replace that whole circuitry board. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. Well, I guess that's better than replacing the whole microwave, which it's being custom put into an IKEA kitchen set thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, we get the quote, and it was $450 for the circuit board and $700 for the labor. So I was like, you could buy a new microwave for that. That's ridiculous. It's one button. Like, how hard could it be to fix? So I said, just live without the microwave. When I get home, I'll fix the damn microwave. So I ordered the parts online. I found them for like $120. So I ordered the parts, and then I set about taking out the microwave and pulled it all to pieces, and went back to where the circuit board was to replace the circuit board with the ribbon and the plug-in and the clip and the whole thing, and realized that there was nothing wrong with anything inside the microwave, but there were 4 clips that held the button against the outside button, and that one of those 4 gray clips had broken. So I got a pair of tweezers that I got from my grandfather, who used to be a gunsmith, and it was like a little dental tools. And then I mixed up epoxy and glued that little piece back and put that little thing in there. My microwave is working.
Wow.
Phil, look at this.
Yes. Now, all I'm saying is it's a lesson for all of us that sometimes we need to dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. Don't make the assumption always that the only way to fix something is to replace it or go crazy. Think back old school, like what would your grandparents have done? Fix it. Fix it.
Will this be an overtime challenge in season 3?
My microwave doesn't work. You must fix it.
I did like that someone pointed out that that Tough as Nails is the only show on television that could make watching paint dry interesting.
No.
That's very true, though, and actually very much like a sort of like an optical illusion, right? Of like, I can't tell what is what because of the paint drying. It was the most exciting I've seen paint drying ever. The
next thing we got to do is we got to make grass growing also exciting.
Yes,
we got
gardening
to challenge around grass growing.
Yeah. Phil, could you tell us about the introduction of, I'm assuming this will be an annual, like, Find Your Inner Murph challenge of the season, to reference the season 1 moments where Murph struggled with heights but overcame them.
Yeah, so it was just something that occurred to me that was a great life lesson. I was really inspired by Murph doing that. And of course, we know Murph went on to win. He was at a stumbling point after getting into overtime, and he got so much support from people who know what it's like to suffer from a fear of heights. And so I just thought it was a great lesson to draw on, to give them some inspiration. So we had, so everybody would give it a go. Like, this is when you got to draw on your inner Murph. Think about where Murph was. He was just as scared as you were, maybe even more scared, but he did it. You can do it. You're safe. We've got you. We had the best safety people out there with us to look after people, and you're going to be fine. This is more about what's going on in here as opposed to, any real present danger or anything about going over the side. So
one final thing that I want to ask, because before you came on, I said I keep forgetting this every time, so I'm going to finally check it off my list. Phil, I want to talk about you always driving the truck into the set. when the day starts each episode? Like, when did you make that decision? Was it to really like present the prize to everyone? Like, you could be just like me driving this truck if you became Tough as Nails champion.
It's just me trying to be badass, and it's my little moment of being in an action movie. Here, it's like me. I'm trying to like emulate Steve McQueen or in Bullet, or I'm trying to be what's his name in Fast and the Furious. So it's
Vin
really,
Diesel.
Yeah, it's just indulge me, Mike. All right, let me drive into my big truck. Feel like I'm.
Listen, Phil, you be your Dom Toretto. You channel your freight train, right? And like you do all the drag racing that you need to with that Ford F-150. I love it.
Yeah, so that's really what it is.
You know what else, Phil? I'll tell you that James Corden on his Skidoo has nothing on you in the truck. You would run him right off the road.
Yeah, he doesn't even drive in carpool karaoke. You're actually doing the driving.
It would be a good host SmackDown, don't you think? I drive up alongside in my truck, and then I like literally open my driver's side door, knock him off with the door, and in one fluid motion, as he's falling off, I jump onto the Skidoo and boom, I'm there and heading straight for Paramount Mountain.
I'm totally here for this beef.
Yeah.
I like that we were here at the origin point of the great Keoghan Corden beef.
Once you get off that Skidoo, get to that microwave, fix that clip, and then you're ready to make some dinner.
Yeah, and then you know that the next time I see James Corden, I find out that he's got some, he's some black belt in some martial arts, and he sees me, and the first thing he does is just, beat that ass. He's like, I'm going to beat that ass, and then he takes me down, paints me into a corner, and I'm completely washed up. All right, I'm gonna.
He's only a nail gray belt, Phil.
He's only a nail.
You have nothing to worry about.
On that note, I'll leave it on that note. Rob, very nice, and nice to see you guys. I got to jump on the call, but I will talk to you soon. And next week is really fun. It's a great show. And you will find out what happens.
All right. Thank you so much, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Take care.
Phil.
Bye,
guys. Bye. All right. So we got the answers to a lot of our questions. Yeah. And very interesting news that so it seems like Freight Train will not be coming back.
Unless they take like a 2-week period to wait it out.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think with that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if at the finale you see him there, like cheering on like whoever else is
from 6 feet away.
Yeah, like I think sort of like when they had the guy in the boat, the sea captain, like.
The boat comes in and it's that captain and Freight Train standing up.
Yeah, maybe put Freight Train in the back of the pickup when Phil drives in, like a Rose Bowl, like hey.
Freight Train parade.
Yeah,
put him on a literal freight train.
So, do you think that they will do the next team challenge 5 versus 4? Do you think they'll sit somebody out?
No, I think what they're going to do moving forward is I think they're going to do 5v4. I do not think, because I think that's an inherent storyline in and of itself, right? The drama of Dirty Hands are now natural underdogs in that they are always going to be outmanned just by pure bodies. And so if every time that they win, it's going to prove that like you can have the mental toughness to even overcome a number deficit. And who knows, maybe the numbers advantage might work in Dirty Hands' favors a couple times. So I have full faith that if indeed Freight Train is not back in the competition, that I think all the team challengers are going to be 4v5 moving forward.
Yeah, there could be a moment where it's like you have to have all your team members get through a thing and end up on the other side of the thing. And, then it is actually advantageous to only have 4 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they could do, the lumberjack challenges that they ended in the last one with, right? Which is a lot of 1v1 matchups. It's not that disadvantageous to not have a person. It just means that someone has to go an extra time. And when you have Angel, the Energizer Bunny, then I think that you're absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to go back to Knuckles because I'm reminded of the conversation that she had with Sarah. I think it was in last week's episode where Sarah said like, oh well, they have 3 men on their team. Well, now it's only 2 men on each team. So it'll be interesting to see like if this is like some extra fuel in the tank for Knuckles and for Dirty Hands to prove that they can win with just the 4. She had an interesting conversation with Zeus in the episode. I liked how she framed it as like, well, Zeus, he's used to being like the just the god's gift to this competition. I mean, his name is literally Zeus. But Jess, I saw that you seemed like you were very inspired by what Knuckles was talking about.
Oh yeah, this is officially a Knuckles Stan account at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I have loved.
Although we love all the contestants.
We do love all the contestants, and I would say it has been very rare. I've watched probably more reality TV than 99% of the population, and it's very, very rare that I have somebody I'm actively rooting for to win. There's people I like better sometimes. I mean, I like everybody. Don't get me wrong here, but I really responded to everything that she's been saying about like just being a woman and putting yourself out there in anything, not to mention like let alone putting yourself out there in a male dominated field. I thought she's had some really great insights to that. And it is very true what she's saying to Zeus in this moment, that if a woman comes out, like women are socialized not to say, I'm awesome and I've got this and I can handle it, just because they're socialized more for humility. And, you would not see a woman come into this competition, name herself after a Greek goddess. Like that's just not going to happen.
There's no Athena.
Yeah, there's nobody's coming in unless their name is literally Athena. They're not going to be like, yeah, my friends call me Athena because I'm wiser than everybody. That's just not going to happen. So I thought it's been really nice to see these conversations coming up, and they did a little bit last season, but not nearly as much as it's been coming up here. And Knuckles definitely has the kind of analytical chops to really verbalize these issues in a way that I think a lot of people resonate with.
Yeah, I think her and Meryl, again, I think everyone speaks about it very well, but in particular, Knuckles and Meryl are the two who I think throughout the season have really spoke about, what it's like to how the rarity of women in their work field and how societal perspectives sort of feed into that. Meryl also talks about coming from as a woman of color as well, how that even adds a layer onto it. And it's another reason why, again, the diversity of this casting is so incredibly important, because how Dirty Hands ends up losing is because of a big communication breakdown, where we were going into this and saying like Zeus could be a dark horse in this competition. There's nothing that he's really bad at, but Knuckles sort of outlines in this episode that Zeus kind of has like his set method on doing things, right? Like you said, he's going to eliminate redundant moves, but it seems like there was an issue with him communicating that to the rest of the team. And so as a result, there was things like not taking the extender out. And it was those small moments that probably cost Dirty Hands a bunch of time and a lot of crosswords exchanged between parties that allowed Savage Crew to come through and take the win here.
Yeah, I think we can pinpoint where, like, if everybody has their Wizard of Oz journey where they're going to come out the other side of this competition better, I think we see what Zeus is picking up along the way.
Mm-hmm. We have not talked much about the individual competition, except that Freight Train ultimately suffers his injury during it. But yeah, we bring back the ceremonial Find Your Inner Murph challenge, where this time around we are washing windows. Jess, is this a challenge that has been done on The Amazing Race?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there was
Season
issues with that harness also, correct?
Yeah, there were. Let's just suffice it to say some of the contestants participating in that challenge did not have a ball.
Yeah, I don't need to go
Sally
back to The Amazing
like, I need
Race.
the pulse oxidizer. We need to put it there.
I don't need to go back to the soundboard.
No, we don't need that. But yes, that was the first thing that came to mind for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, this is sort of the Murph Memorial Challenge, right? And we actually, I know that they made a reference to Murph in the firefighting challenge specifically last season with Bill's Trust Your Gear. But that was not the only one. Let's remember that the first time Murph conquered his heights is when they did like the, before Zeus, there was a lineman challenge where they had to climb all the way up. And that's how we got introduced to it. And here we have various cases, right? Like Freight Train doesn't have a fear of heights. He has a fear of falling, which I think is a really great way to compartmentalize it. But Scott is shaken here. And I think he makes a really great strategic choice in that for some reason, they didn't reveal it last week, but in winning the challenge, Scott gets to pick his partner. He picks Meryl, which is fantastic from a character perspective. They are far and away my favorite dynamic in the show. Those two together, like even in the,
such a great duo.
Yeah, even in the damn van when he's like, no offense, I'm just kidding, I'm gonna murder you all, and Meryl just responds with "F you." It's just like you can tell they really like shooting the shit with each other.
Yeah,
but it was also a strategic choice as well because he's like, I am terrified. I need someone who I know is not only calm, cool, collected, but like will have a fantastic time doing this, and that's Meryl.
Yeah. It's too bad with COVID protocols that they were not actually able to have Murph there in the flesh to get pump up the teams before they did this to say, okay, everybody, that you're going to go out there and just face your fear. You'll be okay.
Beat that ass.
Beat that ass, everybody. But second, was there a choice between which partner had to run this, or was it because Freight Train got hurt that was the other partner then supposed to then take a turn?
Yes.
Yeah, they were supposed to switch.
Okay. That was
just so happened that because Freight Train ran the first leg and everything sort of got cut off at that point. Otherwise, they were going to come down and then the partners were supposed to run up the building and do the other side.
Got it. Because I was like, I guess I'm like watching there's not that much time left. I guess only one person had to do it. Like, that was a weird pick that they had Freight Train do this. But that I feel like that if you only had one partner have to do it, but both partners have to do it.
Yeah, well, I think along the same lines, if it was only one partner that had to do it, Scott and Meryl would definitely have sent Meryl.
Yeah, that's what I was a little confused about. But so both people were going to do it. But Scott is able to not only overcome his fear of heights, but he is able to excel. I thought he was the best out of anybody at washing the windows.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the reach has certainly helped Scott
Incredible.
in this episode. But yeah, I mean, it also helps that there was a big problem with a lot of these people of just like spinning. Even someone like Zeus, again, who is even more used to heights than Meryl, is like careening off the building because it was all about positioning as well.
And Swifty too, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that Scott was able to, once he was able to calm himself down, I mean, it looked like he was physically, literally shaken as he was going off the side of that building. But I think much like we saw with Murph, he was able to keep his eyes ahead, focus on the matter at hand. I really like when he said, like, there was a good chance I was going to walk away from this, but then I realized I would be screwing Meryl over. Like, despite all the talk again about individual versus team, it shows that he does indeed care about his partner and his team in Meryl, that he wouldn't purposely take that DQ if this is something he wasn't comfortable with. And as a result, he was on his way to getting another first place victory alongside Meryl, because I'm assuming once he gets down to the bottom, she's just going to blaze a trail up and down that thing.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the problem is, I think at that point, you can't walk away from it because you're not just consigning yourself to the bottom.
Exactly.
It becomes Scott versus Meryl in the OT, and that would be hard to see, especially because we don't want to lose either one of them at this point.
Yeah, so I especially like the game design of this too. We talked about this actually during the Survivor panel last night. We're talking about the gross food challenge being before the merge versus after the merge, where if it's after the merge, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to eat this. It's only my immunity. But then to have a partner to be paired with somebody of like, I don't want to do this. I'll take the OT. Well, you're also sentencing somebody else to the OT too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good point that, there is another burden on top of that. And while it may not be as unfair, much like what happens in a tribal phase in Survivor, like if one person drags you down, then that means you're consigned to go to the OT. It also doesn't necessarily incentivize people to say, well, I'm going to just coast for this challenge, because then you have the guilt, and everyone really likes each other on this season. Then nobody's like, even if you're trying to pursue something tactically, I don't think anyone's purposely thinking like, okay, I'm gonna put myself in OT against the biggest threat. That is way too much playing with fire.
Yeah, that's not what this show is, for sure.
Yeah.
And in fact, we very rarely see people even say they'd like to see someone in OT. Like, we've gotten a little bit of it, like this person's a strong contender and it would be advantageous, but you never see, I want that person out. I want him to go. And I think part of this is just like the more collegial spirit of the game, but there's also an element of these people are not going home, so you still have to look them in the eye.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest incentive not to do that, is because then you get somebody watching you compete for the entire rest of the game being like, yeah, you screwed me. Hi, what's up? And potentially even like being on the same team with you for the team challenges. So yeah, that's rough. So it does incentivize you to be a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
So, and on that note, I would love to also talk about the conversation in the damn van about Scott being viewed as a threat as well. Because we talked about this during the sheep challenge, right? How this season didn't really have those moments of Danny and Murph saying, okay, we're each other's biggest competition. We didn't have that moment until Scott picks Freight Train and Angel to go against each other. And we get conversation here where even Scott's own team is saying, I think you're a legitimate threat to win. I mean, I'm going to go so far as to say, I know we only got a few episodes left, but I think pencil in Scott for the final 3. I think
no doubt.
I think showing if his track record has improved in it, I think actually getting a storyline now mention of him being one of the biggest threats left in the game, understandably so. He's doing an excellent job.
Well deserved.
Really put him in for that final challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt of that. And, we had him pegged as a threat pretty early on. But, he's just got the best, like, all around skill set, I think. And we're also, we've mentioned the edit is really pushing that on us. They're saying, we watch him perform and objectively he's doing a great job. And then the edit is also reiterating that, like, look, he's doing a good job. Everybody knows, like, even the people there with him, they know he's on his way to the finals.
Yeah. But he's also been incredibly impressive in so many different ways.
Oh, for sure. He's definitely one of the standout reality characters of the year so far.
Okay. All right. You want to dive into some questions from some of the listeners?
Sure.
Yep. And I may need to drop off early, guys.
Okay.
But let's handle a couple
All right,
questions.
well, give us
go.
that. When Phil said I have a microwave story for you, I thought he was like going to tell us like a 30-second story that
I
was.
thought that was some sort of like tatty term, right?
Yeah,
of like, that's a colloquialism. For,
I didn't think he was going to tell a story about a literal microwave.
Yeah, microwave is the same thing in New Zealand as it is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love that term though. Of like, okay, if you have a quick, short, 30-second thing to share, we call it a microwave story now.
Jess, how many minutes do you have?
4, and
All
then
right,
I
4.
have to go get my kid.
Great, and then we'll do we could do 20 minutes on plugs of all me and Mike's podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. Well, I have one podcast, and it's not technically on RHAP, so that's fine with me.
Do you have anything that you want to make sure that we discuss in those few minutes?
I mean, we have covered everything on my list, so the rest of it is just gravy.
Okay. Nick Fishman says, looks like we missed out on a jackhammer overtime. This season is like the co-wrong of Tough as Nails. Did you spot a jackhammer?
I think I saw it in the previous Next Time On from like episode 5 going into episode 6. That there was something with people operating jackhammers. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that was a trick and we're going to get that challenge as an individual challenge later on. But maybe that would have been it. I thought the theming of this episode was interesting in that it wasn't like representing a specific trade. It was clean up the city, I think was the overall theming, which I don't know if jackhammers would have gone along with that. Maybe I guess if you're breaking up like loose slate, that could be cleaning up the city. But I thought
cleaning up the sidewalk. Yeah. And I mean, to that point, we didn't talk about how part of the team challenge involved you had to also clean up after yourself, which I feel like they should do in every challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Put everything away. Patrick Liao says, I can't believe they would do us dirty like that by showing Patrick's medevac on March 17th.
Oh, no!
Yeah, they should have painted the wall green.
Oh, that would have been interesting. I think much like many shows, had they known they would be airing on St. Patrick's Day, they definitely would have been like, you're going to paint this green. Or if they were filming in Chicago, you're going to have to hand dye the river green.
Gross.
So much Green River talk these days. And I see a lot of love for Selly from everywhere. Everybody loves Selly.
She's iconic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what she did was pretty freaking awesome, right? I mean, outside of what John Carroll does when Pascal collapses in Survivor of the Marquesas, I can't really think of any other time that a medical professional contestant...
What are you forgetting about when Eric Reichenbach collapsed and Eddie was able to provide his EMT services?
Yes, I forgot. Listen, Eddie Fox had more appealing moments in the finale of Survivor Karamoan than that, perhaps. But yeah, it's
He
very
had a
rare
great
that
finale.
that a contestant's like, is there a doctor in the house? Yes, I am. Let me step in and help you. And Sully benefited from the fact that she wasn't in the challenge, so she could actually become a part of the medical staff in that portion of time. And she's already quarantined herself.
Yeah. Jess, what do you think of the Dirty Hands cheer?
I feel like it was more involved last season. I think
Is it the
they-
same one? Did the original
No.
Dirty Hands coin that?
Yeah, original Dirty Hands. Well, no, Savage Crew had like a whole.
Savage Crew had Are You Savage?
Yeah, they had Are You Savage, and then
And-
Dirty Hands had like a rap, didn't they? That like everybody had a verse.
Dirty Hands.
Yes.
And this season is just what, Dirty Hands.
Yeah, I feel like we need one more dirty in there. It doesn't. It doesn't
Mm.
scan to me like dirty, dirty, dirty hands. Feels like it has more oomph, but on the other hand, I haven't used that music degree in 20 years, so.
Okay. All right.
All right. I'm
All right,
off,
Jess.
guys.
Thank
Bye,
you so
Jess.
much. Okay.
All right. See ya.
All right. Mike, any other thoughts? Do we know where's the location we're headed next week?
So it looks like we are going back out to the mythical cul-de-sac. I don't know if this was the same one that was slated to be destroyed back in season 1 that they moved people out of, but it looks like I saw them like planting trees. It looks like they might be doing some landscaping work, which is interesting. So we're going back out from the city, but I don't think we really saw much else from that. I think obviously the big storyline going in is going to be, if indeed Dirty Hands is down 4 to Savage Crew's 5, are they going to be able to overcome this deficit? Has Dirty Hands indeed become the Savage Crew of season 1, the perennial underdogs for the last few episodes?
Yeah. It's been a war of attrition here on Tough as Nails season 2.
I know it's been so odd for a show that touts itself as when you go home, you're going to stay here. That has not been the case for a quarter of this cast. And I'm sure
You don't have to go home. You can stay here.
But I'm sure,
Except this
obviously Phil and Louise et al. Did not want it that way.
No.
They are rolling with the punches. I do feel like I jinxed it last week, and I'm like, all right, things are finally back to normal here on Tough as Nails.
Yeah.
And we end things like this. Another time where we don't have an overtime challenge, but I hope that we're able to soldier forward with this group and, get back to the swing of things as we round the final few episodes of the season.
Yeah, it's been 6 episodes. We've only had 3 overtime challenges in the season.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't count Tara, only 2 people have been eliminated in like proper fashion, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride here on Tough as Nails season 2. Okay. Mike, anything else?
I don't think so. I mean, as a Savage Crew stan, I was happy to see them rally and come together. I did like the moment of redemption for Scott as well, where he was talking about like Swifty and I didn't necessarily see eye to eye in a previous challenge, but now I'm going to do so. And Swifty got redemption. And Swifty got redemption as well for the last time that he lost last time he was captain, and now he was able to get some redemption here. He beat that ass.
Okay. All right. Mike, what's going on with you? I know that the other night you and I and Lindsay Wilson got together to talk about Survivor's funniest loved ones visit moments. That loved ones came in season 1 of Tough as Nails, but it wasn't very funny.
No, exactly. But yeah, people on Tough as Nails might consider themselves a family, but we talked about moments of actual blood and water in an outwit, outplay, out list. You, me, and Lindsay Wilson talked about 20 of the funniest moments, either involving a loved one or maybe contentiously so, people talking about loved ones. It was a very fun time, so people can check that out. I know that additionally, Rob, you and I are going to be doing some brand stealing next weekend. Patrons of Rob Has a Podcast. That's an incentive of becoming a patron of RHAP, is you get to play in a Brant Steele game where you are a contestant.
Yeah, and if you're confused as to what that is, that, of course, Mike and I and Josh have done many Brant Steele simulations where that I think that some of our Tough as Nails listeners that are like, what is this now?
You guys are going to a steel mill?
Yeah, with Swifty. And so there's a simulator that can simulate a Survivor season. But we load in 16, 18, maybe 20 real people into a Zoom call, and the simulator tells us what happens, and then we talk to the real people about what's going on. And we'll be doing that next Friday night.
Yeah, so many incentives to become a patron of Rob Has a Podcast, a bunch of extra content, including that. Otherwise, I'm finishing up my coverage of Survivor South Africa Season 5 with Shannon Gus, which has been an absolutely wild ride. We put a final coat of paint on our coverage of that season before maybe doing a couple of interviews before we get into coverage of New Survivor with Season 8 coming in June. And then over on post-show recaps, Lost coverage down the hatch, X-Files coverage with my wife on the Bloom Files, and then also I'm very excited to begin my coverage of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes.
On Everything is Super on post-show recaps. By the time people are listening to this, that might even be on Disney Plus right now.
Okay. All right. So looking forward to all that. Is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier feels like they phoned it in on the name.
I mean, it depends. Maybe they're gonna change the name to Captain America and the Winter Soldier, even though there's a movie called Captain America: the Winter Soldier. So maybe they're going for purposeful title changes as it goes on. I will say, if there's one guy who's not afraid of heights, it's Sam Wilson, considering he is soaring high as part of his power.
He's found his inner Murph.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I can imagine Swifty down at the Forge is, making a metal arm to maybe rival Bucky Barnes in terms of firepower.
I feel like at least WandaVision, they came up with something.
Well, what are we gonna make, Falcon Bucky? Just keep portmanteauing their names together?
It's just I feel like every one of these Disney Plus shows is just like the name of the person.
Well, listen, we can't all be Phil Keoghan coming up with fun little branding, right? Maybe we should put Phil in charge of how to name these Disney Plus shows. I mean, look, what's coming in June? Loki. That's what it's called. So they want to be upfront with what these shows are about.
Yeah. Okay. They've really taken sort of 90s stand-up comedian sitcom naming to Disney Plus.
Oh yeah, just wait until Bucky Barnes takes a machine gun to a watermelon. That's really what gets the crowds laughing.
All right. Of course, I mentioned last night we had a historic podcast here on Rob's podcast. We went on and on and on about Survivor Caramel and the 30th best season of Survivor with the co-hosts of the New Girl, Old Guy Rewatch podcast. It was Ali Lasher and Akiva Winokur. We went through everything from Survivor Caramel and had a lot of fun with that one last night. Plus, we are going to be adding in another week of the RHAP Rewind when Jenny Autumn is going to join Chappelle and myself as we watch the first episode of Beauty and the Geek. Mike, were you a Beauty and the Geek person?
So I wasn't from the first season, but I do remember I caught some of the later seasons when they threw in twists like, okay, now there's one attractive male and one geeky girl, or when sometimes they would reverse the gender. So they definitely played with the formula. But I remember, that was one of those testament shows on the WB, I want to say. And
I think it started WB before CW. Yep. And then, of course, be sure to catch all of our Big Brother Canada coverage ongoing. Taryn will have a eviction recap of a week that Mike Bloom has called the greatest Big Brother week in years.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there were more flips than Swifty on a harness. That's how much was going on in the Big Brother Canada 9 house. If you are a Big Brother fan and you have not dipped your toes into the water of international Big Brother yet, I highly recommend it. It has been so much fun, and Taryn's innumerable amount of coverage to go alongside it is a fantastic companion piece.
Yep. Not to mention one last patron activity. Patron Mafia will be back on Friday night, and Dr. Christian Hubicki will be co-hosting our Patron Mafia coverage on Friday night with Puya Zambakili as Jordan Kalish prepares another round of Patron Mafia. So much going on over at robhasawebsite.com/patron, including our weekly Survivor feedback show. This week all about Survivor Caramel, and I'll be doing that with Sinensky on Saturday. So that's all at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Be on the lookout for the TV theme song bracket part 2 with Chester and Chappelle. That's going to be coming up on Sunday this week. Have a good one, everybody. Take care. Bye.